let's get started, everybody. Good morning. I'm Kelly Bergman. I'm the Operations and Vendor Relations Specialist here, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you all to our final session of the Rockets BOM Computer Consulting Annual User Conference. I don't know if you all know this, but this actually marks our 15th year of presenting this, and we can't be more excited to be able to do this every year for you guys. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded. All attendees are on mute. If you have any questions during sessions, you have two options. You can either put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen or the chat box. I'll be monitoring both. So we'll kind of follow up with those questions towards the end. Feel free to add more if your question doesn't get answered. We do have a full house, so we'll try our best. And now for the reason we're all here. I'm very honored to be part of such a great team, and today I have the pleasure of introducing two of them, Lisa Dion and Justin Teague, two of our top-notch consultants, as you probably all already know. Lisa's been with us for a bit over 2 years now, and Justin a little bit over a year, I believe.
A little over a year, yep.
Yeah, and even though they've not been with us that long, they have plenty of years of doing this exact same work and work like it in their previous places. So you know you're in good hands. While Lisa is one of our manufacturing experts, Justin really does well with the core Sage arena, and he's learning quickly, I'm sure. So now that we're all acquainted, let's jump into your questions. Room's yours, guys.
All right, so I'm gonna get started. We had a few different inventory related questions, and I kind of wanted to run through those, and you'll pardon me if I'm looking at my other screen, but the first, we had several people ask about how to prevent inventory errors. So inconsistencies between inventory data tables, count errors in inventory maintenance, stuff like that. And so I'm going to go through some best practices for sort of preventing those errors from happening, things you can do to avoid them happening in the first place. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can address those errors after they've already happened. And I am going to share my screen here, turn off my camera in a moment so that I can actively show you what I'm talking about. So sort of the first things that you can do to try and keep the most common causes of data corruption or errors to inventory are, generally speaking, leaving data entry tasks in progress, in process, those windows open for a really long amount of time, because the longer you leave those windows open, idle and unattended, the better chance there is that some sort of network interruption or other computer error is going to forcibly close that session, leaving those data files unsaved, half saved, in an incomplete write state. So a few best practices, you don't want to leave things like transaction entries, sales order entries, purchase order entries. Don't want to leave those windows open while you're in the process of entering. It's also always good whenever you're entering or updating transactions, make sure you're on a wired connection. Don't do those things over wireless. Wireless connections, generally speaking, are less reliable than a hardline connection, and increase the chance of you running into some kind of a technical error like that. The other important thing to consider, and this is not strictly required, but just sort of I think a best practice, is if you're doing, say, transaction entries in transaction entry in inventory management, if you can break those into multiple entries with fewer lines, that's generally speaking better than doing one giant entry that has tons of lines. Just because that way, if something does happen to that transaction, you don't end up having to correct 100 lines. You can be in a position where maybe it's 25 lines, you have it broken up into 4 different transactions, and you can update them without having to worry about redoing a massive amount of data entry. Those are not, again, these are not things that you have to be doing, but doing them will decrease the number of errors that you encounter in your day-to-day operations. And it's just, best practices. If you do end up in a position where you have items that don't appear to match your on-hand count. Basically, when transactions don't match what you're seeing in item maintenance. And here I am going to share my screen. Let me just share screen 1 here. And I'm going to, okay, so let me just move this over here. And you should be able to see screen 1, which should have my Sage. So if you end up with counts that are inconsistent, a really relatively benign measure you can take to correct those counts is to rebuild the sort files from library master. And now you need particular security permissions set up and role maintenance to do this. But it can be, a really relatively straightforward and not particularly difficult thing to do. Stop my video here so it's not distracting. So if we go to library master and then to utilities, you'll see rebuild sort files. We're going to go in here. This is my test system, and I'll be using this quite a bit today to show you some stuff. So when you're rebuilding the sort files, you're going to need users to be out of the modules that you're rebuilding for, and also any tasks that interact with those modules. That includes, in the case of if you're doing inventory management, all of the distribution modules touch inventory management, so you can't be in any of those. And generally speaking, you probably just want everyone out of the system while you're doing this, and it's a pretty quick process. So there's a particular order also that you want to update the sort files in, just because of the way that the data flows. You're going to start with purchase order. And again, I'm going to go ABC here, my test company, purchase order, I'm hit proceed. Do I want to recalculate open purchase order quantities and item warehouse file? And this is really what we're getting at, is fixing those counts. And I'm going to say yes here. Then I'm going to do sales order, also for ABC here. And again, open order quantities recalculated. And then if you have work order or use work order, this is the point where you would do that, but that's not always the case. And then finally, we will do inventory management, and that will just kind of true up committed quantities for lot serials and also for non-lot serial items. How often you have to do this? Generally speaking, you shouldn't have to do this a lot. I think it's best practice to, maybe every 3 weeks you could just do it just as a matter of course. But if you find your counts are frequent, or more frequently than that, are needing to be rebuilt, if you're doing this once a week or twice a week, then you probably have some underlying issues that that you should dig into, because they shouldn't be getting out of sync that often. And that's the point where you might want to get us involved to take a look and try and figure out what exactly is going on. We also had a question about correcting item costing, and that's a pretty complex question. I'm going to sort of speak an overview about it. Costing in Sage is sophisticated, and so correcting costing can be equally complex depending on the situation. Certain valuations are easier also to correct than others. For instance, standard costs are rather straightforward to adjust. I'm going to show you where to do that. So if an item has any transactions against it in its standard costs, you're not going to be able to change it in item maintenance anymore. Bring this back over. So these are FIFO, but this, like, if the valuation is standard and you have transactions, this standard cost will be grayed out. You won't be able to change it anymore. And so where you have to go to correct those is standard cost adjustment entry in the utilities and inventory management. Here you will enter your item code and then the new standard cost. accept that, and then when you've selected all the items you want to update, you'll run this register update to change the costs. Again, for standard, for standard cost items, relatively straightforward. With average cost items, which are, averaging costs between all transactions against the item, correcting the costs on hand for those can be more complicated. If you have a quantity on hand for that item, generally speaking, the most straightforward way to correct the costs is to adjust out the on-hand quantity at the incorrect cost, the current incorrect cost, and you do that through transaction entry by choosing the adjustments transaction type. So you would adjust out the quantity on hand at your wrong cost, and then after updating that transaction, you would adjust the quantity back in at your correct cost. And this is also true for lot and serial items. The main difference there is that you would pick the particular lot or serial quantity that you had on hand to correct those costs. Sometimes you have incorrect costs or costs on hand for zero quantity items. That situation can be a lot more complicated and usually requires examining the transaction history to try and determine why the costs were incorrect to begin with. It could be an issue of the item history not being calculated correctly. There are a lot of reasons why that can happen, and that's I think a more complex situation that I couldn't properly cover in a Q&A session. Let me just take a brief minute here. So sort of in relation to talking about incorrect costing on received items, what is the best way to unreceive inventory received at the wrong cost or on the wrong date? And again, we're talking about transaction entry. When the issue is really the item itself, when you're not talking about invoices for customers or invoices from vendors, you're just talking about the item details being incorrect. Transaction entry is going to be the best way to correct this. It'll allow you to adjust the quantities, change the costs. Sometimes if they're received at the wrong date, you can then again adjust them out and then receive them back in at the correct date. That's generally speaking not the sort of situation where you'd want to process a return or that sort of thing. That usually is more complicated of a solution than you need for that situation. Why do the item tabs not match, and what's the best way to determine why these don't match? So for this, I'm going to go into item maintenance and talk a little bit, and this is gets a little bit into the data files themselves. But when you are in item maintenance, you can end up with sort of conflicting reports about things like quantity on hand or sometimes also costing. So here, we see and down here in our quantities, we have available on hand amounts showing for our warehouses. Now, these numbers are pulling from the IM item warehouse table, and that's all. And each of these records also stores a cost and an associated warehouse value. The CI item table, which is the base item table, also stores some of that information. And sometimes those two things can get out of whack, in which case, usually the best course of action there is to recalculate the item history, as the item maintenance, the CI item table, once it's written to, isn't really checking against the item warehouse all the time. So that's usually the best way to do that. And the recalculate item history is under the utilities. Usually before you do this, though, I do recommend taking a backup, as sometimes recalculating the item history can change other item on hands in ways that you might not necessarily expect. So it's good to not rush into that particular fix. Let's go over to, hopefully that covers most of the inventory stuff. And again, like Kelly said, if you have any follow-up questions about the things I'm talking about, feel free to drop them into the chat or into the Q&A session, and we'll address them at the end of the session. I had some system-related questions that people asked. The first of which, what is the easiest method to execute a custom query against the Sage 100 database for export to Excel or to PDF? And so this depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but generally speaking, the answer to this question is through a custom Crystal report. Now, in Excel itself, you can do an MS query to pull data from the Sage system. The problem with this is that Microsoft queries, and we go here to data in Excel, and I'm going to go to from other sources, and we're going to choose, I'm going to choose from Microsoft query here. And it's going to show me my data sources. In this case, Sotamass 90 is Sage's. I'm going to hit OK here. And it's going to ask me to log in using my Sage credentials so that I can access the database. And then now the thing to consider with Microsoft Query is that it is not able to, and this is the major limitation of why I would say probably your best bet is a Crystal report if you have a more complicated query in mind, is that Microsoft Query can't handle complex relational relationships between data tables. So you can at most query 2 data tables through Microsoft Query. It can that have a direct link between them. So for instance, invoice history header and invoice history detail, you could pull information from both of those. Anything more than that, and the query will still probably return data, but it won't be especially useful because MS Query just isn't complex enough to handle that kind of relationship. I'm just going to cancel this. We don't actually, I guess, let me just show you what it looks like when this returns data. So we're going to get, let's look at AR invoice history header. And I'll just show you invoice number, invoice date, transaction date. I'll just return this. And as you, my data set's pretty small. This is just demo data, so not a ton of things here, but it does get you filtered fields. And this can be useful, again, if you just wanted to see all the records on a, on a table like invoice history header or detail. You didn't necessarily need to see, you're not trying to link disparate sets of data. You just want to see all the records on a particular table. This can be useful for that. But if you have a more complex query that you want to be able to export to Excel or to a PDF, the recommendation from me is definitely to use Crystal Reports. Crystal Reports is going to be able to link different tables together through complex relationships. It can query data in parallel, and so long as you format it correctly, it can export cleanly to Excel. Sometimes that can get challenging to do as well, but this is really the most powerful tool for custom queries out of the database. And generally speaking, that's what I would prefer if I was looking for, if I was trying to link together different data sets in a complex way. So the other, I had some questions relating to several different similar error sets when printing through Sage tasks. There's one that you get that says activate X cannot process the lock file. Sometimes when you're trying to email forms or registers to clients, you might get a failed to create the PDF message. And other times when you're trying to update journals or registers to paperless office, or send sales orders, or those sorts of things, you might get a printer not activated error with some sort of number after it, usually -30, -41. This is a really common occurrence. All of these different messages mean the same thing. They all mean that the Sage PDF converter has not been configured correctly, or the configuration has been disrupted in some way. And this is something we see a lot because Microsoft will push out Windows updates, and sometimes these Windows updates will make changes to your registry, or they'll make changes to your devices and printers, which can reset the security settings or overwrite registry entries for your Sage PDF converter and cause it to no longer work correctly. Now, sometimes the reason why it's done this are complicated, and you may need to contact us so we can look at it. But there is a relatively straightforward thing that most users should be able to do, and it will allow you to sort of do a first step troubleshooting before you have to reach out. Now, I'm gonna try and again, this, I'll be sending out a copy of these questions and answers with notes to all the attendees after this session, so you don't have to remember the things that I'm typing or saying or write them down. I will send you most of the stuff in summary. So I'm going to go to File and to Run, and then I'm going to type PL Advanced Options _UI, and then I'm going to hit OK here. This is going to open a window, this paperless office advanced options window. Generally speaking, don't recommend having this box checked. So if you're ever unsure about whether or not the PDF converter is working, you can hit this test converter button. If the PDF converter is installed correctly, it's going to pop up a window like this saying that the PDF converter is functioning correctly. If you're getting an error from that, you can just hit uninstall converter and then install converter after the uninstall finishes, and it will most of the time correct any issues that you're having. Sometimes if you don't have sufficient security rights on the workstation, or if something has gone seriously wrong, it won't fix the error. But I would say that at least 85% of the time, that's all you actually have to do to fix these errors. And this can kind of reduce the amount of time you spend trying to unravel this particular error. Let me see. So also on the subject of printing tasks, if your print settings are defaulting to strange window size, perhaps you are only seeing a portion of the page. A good thing to consider is that Sage is very sensitive to the default printer that you have selected as your default in Windows. So for instance, if you have a label printer, Sage will very frequently, if you have that label printer set as your default, it will default your page size to a standard label size, which is naturally much smaller than a regular print page. And so then your forms will default to that kind of odd smaller print size. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you are seeing issues with your printing, consider what default you have set. Maybe you didn't even set the default. Windows sometimes will manage that, and that also can cause issues where Sage will get confused by that. So it's better to have a regular valid printer manually set as the default. My last question I have here, and this is very common, and you'll see this across a lot of different tasks, and some users will encounter this where you have customized panels in Sage that, you know, maybe so that you can see UDFs, or because you have, you know, fields rearranged in a particular way that, you know, individual users like, or that is more efficient for your operation. And then one day the user signs in and all their customizations are gone. It just looks like the default screen, missing all of their custom fields. Now, that can be caused at the user level. Sometimes a user will either purposely or, you know, accidentally create a sort of blank custom panel under their user, which prevents them from seeing the real custom panel. If that happens, the first step to troubleshooting it is to try and reset the panel and remove those incorrect customizations. Now, the way to do that is very straightforward. You just find a blank space on the window. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to go to panel settings, and then I'm going to say reset panel. And if there are individual customizations for that user that shouldn't be there, or, you know, that should, you know, that are preventing them from seeing the customizations open to everyone, you're going to be able to check this box that says delete customizer modifications. And usually you want to check all three of these boxes and then close out of the task, reopen it, and that should reset the panel. Those were the questions that I had to explain. Lisa, I'm going to pass it off to you before I move on to my the main tips and tricks topic.
Great, thank you, Justin. I am going to share my screen with y'all. Screen number 3. Oops. Alrighty, can everybody see my screen? We're good with that. My first questions were about some reports and what are the most useful reports in operations management. And there's a great selection of pre-written reports. Some of the ones that are used most often and I recommend would be the work ticket variance report. This will allow you to, you can run it by a individual work ticket, or you can run it for all your open work tickets. This report here will give you your current budgeted hours, your actual hours, and any kind of variance that is posted with those. So you can be able to look at why, you know, how you're progressing as the job is being completed, and being able to see your profitability. This is just on a summary level. So if you're wanting to go in and say, wow, I have 22 hours here when I only anticipated having 12, the next best report would be to run the work ticket transaction detail report. This again, you can run for open or history or both. You can also select the type of transaction type. So if you have a lot of data and say you only wanted to focus in on that labor detail for that discrepancy and big variance for that particular work ticket, I could easily check all and then uncheck all and just do my labor. Or I can go ahead and take a look at the entire report. This will break it down by step with your hours and the details of each individual employee who is working on that job, and allow you to see all the parts that have been issued to the work ticket, along with providing you with a subtotal by step, and then an overall report total and sales order total and work ticket total. So instead of having to view all this information individually in the work ticket edit, this work ticket transaction detail report is a really great report to use. This report as well is also very beneficial when you are running the WIP reconciliation report, which you should, of course, be reconciling your WIP at least at the end of every month, and making sure that it balances to your general ledger. When you run this report, you do have the option, if I do put in a reconciled to date, then it will just give me all my work tickets from today. If I want to reconcile for like the month end, I would just select that date, and then it will warn me that it's going to lock the files, and I can just say yes, and then I can preview or print my report. This, theoretically, the total WIP amount should balance to your general ledger. And anything, because I ran it with a through date, anything that's future WIP has been transacted after this date that I selected that I want to reconcile to. So if you do have an out of balance situation, running the work ticket transaction detail report for that same period for all your tickets will provide you a great tool of being able to dive into what actual work ticket or work tickets may be the cause of the out of balance situation. Another good report to run is the work ticket profit analysis report. This you can print by the sales order, the work ticket, the step, the activity code, or you could take a look at just a work ticket class in general to see how you're doing with that. And of course, you can do open, history, or both. And if you're wanting to run this report often, and say you want to do it by sales order, but you're also wanting to do it by work ticket class frequently, but don't want to have to make all those selections every time, or you're only ever wanting to look at open, you can easily create multiple report settings by just selecting save as and then giving it a name, choosing to make it your default or not report. And then once I make these changes here that I want to do it by sales order and say I only want it for open, if I click on save, then the next time I go in and recall this report setting, I won't have to make any of the selections here. So because I ran it by sales order, if I had multiple work tickets on this sales order, they would all be rolling up here together. But this is on a more summary level of being able to see how well I am doing on that job, and or print it from history if you're wanting to look at historically how your profitability is going on a job or multiple jobs. And with all reports, especially like the standard canned reports, there tends to be, oh, it has great information, but I don't like the format. How can I get that information formatted differently if I don't know how to write crystal reports, was another question here. So if it's a complex change, definitely something, reach out to us and we can help with creating a custom report. But another really powerful tool that sometimes gets overlooked are the Explore views that are available with every module, or going in through the Business Insights module up here at the top, and it will list all of them again from every single module here. These are very easy to use and to customize. They do have some limitations though, as the tables are already pre-linked. So you would not be able to, if the table did not exist when I go into edit and then column settings, and if I click on add here, it'll show me the columns, the data sources that I can pull data from. So if you're wanting some bit of data that is not here, then you would need to go to a custom Crystal report to get that information so we can add that data source on here. But this is very user-friendly. It is more functionality like if you're used to working in Excel where you can do some filtering. You can easily grab a field and drag it up to the top and group by that item code here. Once I've created a group, I can then add summaries if I wanted to. I clicked on the summarize button here, and then I can do a right click and tell it what I want it to do. Again, there is some limitations that you would not have if you're writing this in Crystal. If there's data that I don't care, like I'm not wanting to see all my revised material costs, let's say, or my revised budgeted costs at all, again, go back to the file or edit column settings, and I simply unselect the ones that I do not want. If there's something I wanted to add, click on add and then just expand the table that I'm looking for and add in, let's say let's add in my activity code here. So it's a great little tool to be able to customize your reports. It also really exports nicely to Excel, which I know a lot of people want to get their reports in Excel all the time. So again, this is a great option. Justin did a session in our conference last year that's posted up on our website where he goes into far more detail of what you can do with the Business Insights Explorer. But it's also similar to like when you create a custom lookup in any one of the lookup screens, you know, you're not going to break anything by doing this. It's smart enough to remind you if I try and close this that I have made a change and do I want to save it? I can say yes and give myself a group by parent. And then the next time I go in and pull up that view, I can choose the report setting that I'm looking for. Another nice thing about being within the Explorer view as well is it is dynamic. So I can go into tasks when I'm on certain screens, like I am in the time tracker entry view right now, which is a great tool that if you're not using like the work order scan or sorry, the JO scan or the manufacturing 100 for collecting your labor and have a dashboard, using this time tracker data entry view can kind of replicate that dashboard feel. As in mine, I have it grouped here by my activity code. So I can see everybody who's clocked into a specific activity code, what time they started. This is all your unposted labor. So once you run and update your daily parts usage, that time will clear out of this screen here. But it is nice because you can, if say that you notice that Todd's clocked in to the ticket twice here and it shouldn't be, you can easily go in and fix, it'll take you directly to time entry, or you can go into the work ticket entry. So you can be using this as a tool to view and correct data or issue parts, whatever you would need to be doing to correct that information. Another question that we got was, how do you use SIM to determine the material shortages? And SIM is a fabulous tool. The Component Exception Manager is a fabulous tool for telling you what you need to make or what you need to purchase. Most often it's ran by inventory item, and here you can decide if you want to do it by make only or buy only or both. The make and the buy, of course, is determined by the procurement type that you've assigned to that item in item maintenance. One thing you want to do before you run it is, if the clear selections button is, clear your selection so that you can create a new fresh batch of any of your new orders that come in or any work tickets that have created additional demand. It's always best to clear the selections. It's just a temporary work file, so you have the most up-to-date data. You can optionally put in a cutoff date. So if you're only wanting to plan work tickets and or purchases, that are due within the next month or next 2 months, you can put in your cutoff date here, and that will look at the promise date or required date within the sales order and or in the work ticket. Since I have a small data set, I'll just leave it wide open and go ahead and click on generate my file. And then continue. Looking at the edit purchased items, it first defaults into the items to buy only. And what we're looking at here is it's calculating how much it thinks that you should buy based upon your quantity on hand, your stock demand, or in addition, if you have reorder points set up. As an example here, my board IDX for warehouse TK1, it doesn't have any on hand, but it doesn't have any stock or work ticket demand. So if I look at that item, if I select the item, I can go into inventory button down here. It's going to show me that I have a reorder point and that I need to have 50 on hand at all times. And since I have 0, it's going to tell me I need to buy that right now. So once you review and determine what you want to buy and who you want to buy it from, it does come in with the primary vendor, but you can always change that. You can edit the unit cost, and you can increase or decrease the quantity to purchase here. And as you can see, looking at my data, I definitely need to do some improvement with my inventory setup. So if you're not really utilizing this component exception manager yet, and you do want to utilize it, some best practices would be making sure you have primary vendors assigned, that if you want to use reorder points, that you have those assigned. Also, some things I've come across in all the years is that this is a great tool, but people have bad underlying data, as in old purchase orders that have not been completed that still have a quantity coming in that would skew your quantity on PO and potentially give you the wrong quantity to be purchasing. Same thing if you have old work tickets out there, or if you're having issues in general with your inventory and keeping your quantities correct. Like here, I have a negative quantity on hand. So that will tell me to make 2, 1 for my work ticket demand and 1 to clear up my negative quantity on hand, which I may not want to do. It may just be an inventory adjustment. So that would be an example of where I could just say that I'm going to purchase 1. I can put everything on hold and then just uncheck the things that I would like to purchase. That one's not going to work because I don't have a primary vendor. And click on create my PO. Now, if it's something that you can make and or buy, and say your vendor can't get it to you in time, so you're going to make it yourself, you can highlight the item and move it to a make. So though it does look at the procurement type assigned in item maintenance, if it is an item that can go either way, I would recommend setting the procurement type to the way that you purchase or procure it most often, but realize that you do have the flexibility that you can move it between the two screens here, and of course create POs will create purchase orders. And when I'm in my manufactured items screen, if I click on create work tickets, that of course is going to create me the work ticket. The work tickets here get created. First, it's going to go look for a template that matches and do the auto templating and generate the work ticket based upon the template. If a template does not exist, but a bill of material exists, it will still create a work ticket with only step 000 and explode out the bill of materials for you. Really nice too if you have sub-assemblies, because once I create a work ticket, if that generates additional demand either for something to make or something to buy, these screens refresh dynamically. And once you are done creating all your work tickets and or your purchases, like I said, it'll just refresh for you so that you're making sure that you're taking care of all of your demand that is needed. Another question that we got was, can I move a work ticket to another sales order? No, you can't. If it's a make to order type of work ticket, say you put in the wrong customer number, you can just go into sales order entry and of course change that customer, but you can't actually move a work ticket to another sales order. What you can do though is you can review the work ticket that's incorrect, determine what the total cost of that work ticket is. Yeah, sorry, I have too many screens open. You can determine what the total cost of that work ticket is for the parent item. And again, you can do that by going into one of those mini reports that we were just reviewing, or go into the work ticket itself. Let's see, that's a quote, that won't be good. Let's pick this one here. So what you can do is you can take the parent item and either in parts usage within work ticket edit or parts usage through time tracker entry, you can put the parent item on here. Oops. Oh, yeah. Had my mouse in the wrong place. And I can make my quantity required a negative. And before I put in my quantity used, I can put in the total cost that I've incurred on this work ticket right now. Then go back over and put in my quantity used as a -1. And what that will do for me is that will put that item into inventory for me. Then because I have allocated all my costs as a negative and as a part here within the work ticket, my next step would be to do a $0 invoice to close out this work ticket, but you're going to have your cost will be 0 as well because you just pushed all that cost back into inventory and into the parent item. Then you would create a new work ticket, and on the parts tab, the only part would be, or not the only, but you would put the part on the parent item on again, issue that one that you just put into inventory to that, and then add any other parts, or if you're still in the process of manufacturing it, put it back out into the production floor and collect additional labor and material costs against that work ticket. So though you can't really move it, you can, you know, correct your inventory and your costs by doing that way. Another thing, which I'm not sure if it was with the question or not, but there is a work ticket class change utility. So if it was just that it was entered incorrectly with the incorrect work ticket class, and that's what you want to correct and or move, as long as the work ticket classes have the same setups, you can come in here and bring in the work ticket and pick the new work ticket class that it's going to. So because this is my custom work ticket class, it would need to be a work ticket class that has the same same type of setup in order to be able to complete this. If I do like my make to stock, it's not going to let me do that because that behind the scenes is just different functionality between a make to stock and a make to order work ticket class. So one of my last questions here kind of involves with BOMs, work tickets. What if we're trying to move from we just use bill of materials production entry and we would like to move to operations management? One of the questions was, you know, what's the most difficult part about that process? And you've already got a whole lot of the work done because you've already got your bills. The biggest thing seems to be determining your activity codes, which would be your work centers, and creating your work ticket templates. But with having bills in place already, we can leverage that work that you've already done by using the template in conjunction with the bill of material. So on here, I have my bill of material and I'm saying to explode my BOM, and then I have my quantity required. So even if you don't know all your steps and your routings and your activity codes, but you want to get using operations management relatively quickly, you can just do a single 000 step and explode my bill of material. And that's going to give you the ability to see all of your demand, help you with planning, which you do not get from a bill of material production entry since it's an after the fact type of entry. And then as you grow, or a second phase in the project could be adding more steps and defining your activity code, since in some instances that does seem to be a spot that takes a bit longer to get going and involves more time from the client. And one great thing too, so if you do use bills with options, all of that can still work together with creating the template, the sales order. I'm going to go ahead here and create a sales order real quick. Put in my custom work ticket class. I'm going to go to the lines and add my item. Check my work ticket box, put in my quantity ordered. And there, as soon as I click that, there pops up all my bill options. I make my selections for my options. And once I select OK, because I have a template that matches this bill of material, it's going to go ahead and ask me if I want to create my work ticket from my template. So now I have everything all together. I have my options selected. I've created my work ticket, and I have also exploded out my bill of materials. And kind of one last question in the realm of the bill of materials is somebody was feeling like they're kind of outgrowing utilizing BOMs with options, either that they now have more options available as the bill options are limited to 9 different options, and or you know, we see quite often that they're starting to have to create hundreds of part numbers to accommodate each type of bill and each type of option. So great solution for that if you're, you know, realizing that you're outgrowing it for whatever either reason you have here, would be taking a look at the product configurator in operations management. This is a great rules-based tool, which again, you do not get that information in, you do not get the rules built in if you're using BOM options. Sorry, I have it open somewhere else. So this is just a very simple door configuration, but it does great things as, you know, like I said, if you're getting beyond your 10 or 9 options, which this is, you will go through a series of questions in sales order entry. This creates your template, your bill of materials, creates a smart part number for you, provides your users with assistance here of different notes, so that if there's an option that's available and why it is or is not available on certain things. And behind the scenes as well, you know, we have, like I said, we have the bill of materials, and it can dynamically calculate quantities for you. Pricing, which again is a limitation with the bill of material options. There you can put in a pricing, but it does not do any type of calculations for you. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and generate your work ticket. You can also save templates as well. So that about wraps up my BOMs and questions with BOMs and options. So I'm going to pass it back to Justin now.
Okay, so I have 2 sort of new features that I wanted to talk about. One of them is available from 2020 forward, and the other is new to 2021. I'm going to start with the 2021 feature, as it's relatively minor and straightforward, but I think is a really useful sort of security role addition. So I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen again here and unminimize my desktop. So a lot of the time when exploring new projects or attempting to test fixes to data, sort of like similar to maybe the corrections to the item history that I was talking about earlier, it can be useful to create a backup company to test your fix in or test a new implementation in. One of the sort of sometimes scary things about that is that when you give a user the ability to copy company data, there's always the danger that they will overwrite your live data. Now, in 2021, we've gained a new way to categorize companies as live, archive, demo, or test. Now, the reason that that is important is that we've also gained new security settings in role maintenance that let us exclude the option for users to make changes to live or archive data. So if we have, our live companies, or we have archive data that is, for record keeping purposes, maybe we want to purge our transaction history, but we want to retain that history for reference purposes in a backup company. We can label those as live companies and archive companies, group them that way, and then in role maintenance under library master and security options, we can say there's a security option for allow, delete, overwrite of live and archive companies. So we can take this ability away from certain power users that we want to be able to allow them to create test or demo company copies, but we don't want them to have the possibility of overwriting or accidentally deleting our live and archive companies. This is a really, I think, neat and I would say long wanted addition to the security settings that I think is very helpful. Again, if you have particular power users who you want to empower to create test companies, but you want to make sure that they can't accidentally overwrite your live data or any archive data. So that's a handy addition to the security settings that's been added in Sage 100 2021. The next thing I wanted to talk about before I wrap up my segment was added in 2020, and it is the ability to track lot serial expiration dates. So you have lots or serialized items that you want to assign expiration dates to. So this can be particularly relevant for perishable goods if you want to assign a cutoff where those items can no longer be selected for sale or for use in manufacturing processes. So this functionality in particular can be set up in, let me just go in here. So the first step is to turn on this functionality in inventory management options. Now, yeah, I think I must have it open. Let me just, I do, I have item maintenance open. Okay, so I'm gonna go into inventory management options first, and I'm going to go to the additional tab. Again, this will be available if you are in 2020 or 2021. And as you can see, we have lot serial expiration. We have enable lot serial expiration dates is the most essential thing. This has to be turned on, otherwise these fields will not be visible in any tasks. You can set require expiration date. Usually you don't want to have this turned on globally for all items, as any items that don't have an expiration date will, especially if you have them on open orders, that can cause problems. You really probably will set this for particular items or product lines. Thanks for coming, Nancy. And like I said, I will send out these on a Word document, so anything you miss will be sent out to you. Sorry about that. So you can also calculate the expiration date, so you can have the expiration date calculated automatically based on either a number of days, number of months, number of years. You don't have to do that, but it can be handy if you have again perishable goods that have a set shelf life. You can have the expiration date be automatically calculated based on particular criteria. And again, you're probably not going to set this globally in inventory options, but you can. So I'm just going to hit accept here. The next level we can set this at, so we get granular control of this. We can set it at the product line. So if we have particular product lines that need to have expiration dates on them, we can again set that and set it to track it, require it, calculate it based on the product line. Now, it's important to note here that if you already have items that exist on your product line and you check to enable the lot serial expiration date, checking that setting on the product line will not roll down or push out those settings to your individual items unless you go to the apply and then you have it apply the lot serial expiration settings for those item codes. Otherwise, just changing it on the product line will not change it for existing items in those product lines. If we go to item maintenance now, and I'm going to go to my first lot item. This is a lot item. If we go to more now, under more, we'll have lot serial and lot serial expiration. So we can, again, now at this item level, we can granularly set whether we're going to track lot serial expiration dates, require them, calculate them. Now, once we've enabled the lot serial expiration tracking for a particular item, or a set of items, and in this case, this is going to be my demo item for this this particular demonstration test drive. I can hit accept here. It's going to be now enabled tracking of lot serial expiration, and this is going to show, change our view in a number of different places. Now, if I go to the cost detail, for instance, for an item that I have enabled the lot serial tracking, there will be a field where I can see the expiration dates for individual lots. These don't have expiration dates showing because the expiration dates over here. There's no expiration date assigned because I haven't assigned one yet, but it adds this field so that I can see what the expiration date is for a particular lot or serial number if it's a serialized item. Let me go to all entry tasks. Now, where do we enter the expiration dates for a particular, lot? Well, you can enter it basically at any point where you would be transacting against that lot or serial number, or a lot or serial number for that item. So let's say I'm going to process a receipt of this item. My 2480-8-50 item, I'm going to receive one. I'm going to distribute, and as you can see, I can receive into a lot, and I can assign an expiration date now. And then you could also be receiving a new lot, but I can assign an expiration date, hit OK. When I update this transaction now, that expiration date will be applied to that lot. Now, you might be in a situation where you want to edit a lot or serial expiration date, but you don't need to perform a transaction against the lot. So you're not doing a receipt, you're not doing a sale, you just realize, oh, I need to change the expiration date on this particular lot for this item. There's a utility to do that in inventory management under utilities. It's right here at the bottom, change lot and serial expiration dates. Now you can do this for particular items. You can do it for a single lot on an item. You can do it for a whole range of lots or range of items, assign a new expiration date, choose your lot number, choose your item code that maybe changed, and this is useful if you're setting up initial expiration dates, maybe for all the lot or serial items on a particular item code as you're implementing this. And you can also, if maybe you're just trying to assign default expiration dates to items, lots that don't have them yet, you can check this apply only to tiers with no expiration dates so that you don't overwrite existing expiration dates. Like, this is a really powerful tool, very handy. You can, again, assign these expiration dates pretty much at any point where you would be distributing a lot or serial item on a transaction. You can do it also in operations management. You can assign expiration dates as you are distributing parts to work tickets. So in parts distribution on the work ticket, you can set the expiration date there too, and that will flow through. You can also, through security in role maintenance, you can limit who has rights to assign or modify expiration dates. So if you don't want everyone to have access to the utility in inventory management, you can assign that security setting in security options in role maintenance. This is, I think, a really powerful addition in terms of lot tracking in inventory management, and this was again implemented in 2020. So very, very excellent piece of added functionality. That is all I had to say on that subject. So I'm gonna pass it back to Lisa. I think she has a few tips or tricks that she wanted to discuss, and then we'll open it up to general questions.
Great, thank you, Justin. I learned a lot on that one.
That's a pretty neat function. So
Yep, it is. Yeah, so like Justin said, I just had a couple of questions on like, what utilities besides like the rebuilding sorts that Justin showed earlier, can we do ourselves if we encounter errors? And one that comes up quite often for anybody who does cash receipts is that sometimes you'll be doing it cash receipt and you'll try and see this invoice and it says that it already has an amount posted, which is not true because this invoice still has a balance here. So what you can do is continue with all the other cash receipts, especially if you've already entered quite a few and you don't want to have to delete them, and then put this one aside and make sure that everybody is out of cash receipts entry. And then based upon your security, you can come up here to file and then run and type in *UTL, and this will take you to some utilities that don't appear on the main menu. And they've actually added 2 of them I believe they're both in 2021, is one for AP open invoice and one for AR open invoices. So AP, you would also get that like if you're trying to do a check and it's telling you that the invoice balance is exceeded, but you know that you haven't paid it. Again, both of those are coming from a setting behind the scenes being set incorrectly and thinking that they're currently being paid. So once you have everybody out of cash receipts entry, you go ahead and select the AR open invoice payments today utility. Select OK. It's going to tell you exactly what it's going to do and remind you that you need to have everybody out. You go ahead and click proceed. Now if I go to do my cash receipt again, and it's one of those quick little utilities, just like rebuilding the sorts, where the most time consuming thing about it is trying to get everybody out of the system so that you can go ahead and take care of that. What was my customer? If I go back over to my lines, you see that my amount posted is been cleared and is set properly so that the invoice amount is the $5,000 that they do owe. And now I can go ahead and select that invoice without any further issues and continue my cash receipts and update and post. There's also a couple of easy ones if you're getting data validation errors, which depending upon the version that you have installed can prevent you from going processing the invoice and or the make to stock closing. So that's down there in the operations management data validation report. Go ahead and preview that. And we're going to see that I have two that are straightforward and something that you can fix yourselves. So the first one is a 121. This is telling me that the lines of my sales order do not match the total of my sales order. And the 302 is telling me that my detail has gotten a little bit out of whack with my buckets that hold my total labor costs. For the 121, that's going into sales order entry. And let me get my 1673. So I'm simply just going to go into my sales order, make a note of the tax schedule that you have assigned currently on the order. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to change it to something else. And then I'm going to hit accept. Go back into that sales order, change it back to the original value. And that is going to go in and reset my lines and my totals so that they'll be in balance with each other and clear my validation error. The 302, that would be utilizing, again, operations management, go down into utilities, and we want to run the work ticket recalc utility. I'm going to pick open. You can do it for all of them. It does just go in and clear it, true everything up, similar to the rebuilding the sort files. Since I have few, I'll just say, okay. It's going to go through, tell me it ran through 133 work ticket steps and one was reset. So if I go back in now, which you should always do after correcting any kind of data validation errors, go back in and I'm going to rerun that report to confirm that I corrected all my errors and or didn't make any additional ones. This is always a great thing to get here. Data is not select for report printing means that all your validation errors have been corrected.
My favorite message to see on that report.
Yes, it is. So you also had a couple questions about, we were thinking of upgrading and what's new out there and why should we do it. So I'm just going to quickly run over some features that are new that I think are pretty awesome. One of them is I'm in AP and I made my payment selection, right? And I go in and I say, yes, I want to print my checks. Let's just do this real quick so I can actually print them. And I just click and I print all, and I take a phone call and I'm not paying attention. And I go ahead and I say yes to print the check register and update it. And then I go back and look and go, oh my gosh, I did all my checks. I didn't mean to do that many. And what am I going to do now? Previously, anybody who's done something like that knows the painstakingness of that you have to go into manual check entry and reverse each check individually and recall every invoice. In 2021, there is a new utility that allows you to reverse a check run. So you can run this by the bank code and the check number, or in my instance, I want to reverse my entire check run. So I'm going to pick a source journal register number, put in my register number here. It brings up all my checks that were just in that check run and the status of it being available or not available to reverse. If I'm good with this, I go ahead and I click on proceed. And within seconds, all my checks are now reversed and all my invoices are open on my vendor account and available for me to select them properly this time.
I can think of a lot of people who are going to be very happy with that one. That's a
Oh,
really
yeah.
significant improvement in functionality. Wow.
Me, when I used to be an AP clerk 100 years ago and made that mistake, would have loved having that then. Yes, that's for sure. Another one that I always get asked, why does it do that? In item maintenance, you know, when you go to the transactions tab, it defaults into the current open period based upon your inventory your inventory module, which is like if you're not closing your modules timely, you know, you're going in here and you're getting data back to whenever that is, and you always have to go in and click this button and put in your search criteria. In 2021, there is a new option in inventory maintenance. Oh, sorry, there it was. I missed it. That I can set what I want my default selection to be. So I still had this at current period, which is like how it functions now. But now I have all these choices. So like I would think it'd be a great option to do my current fiscal year. Then I'm always looking at my transactions for right now without having to do that search every single time I want to go in there. I think this is a great addition, and it's, like I said, it's been a question I've been asked a lot of times of why does it do that? It's the way that it is, but it's nice now that you can change this and the way that it interacts there.
Also, to kind of interject there, that in the item maintenance on the transactions tab, it will now actually also show you what your current selection is above that selection window. So if you see it right there, yeah, it actually, so previously you would have to, you know, you might not, like you said, you might not notice that you were in a subset selection because there was no indication. And now at least, even if it is defaulting to, you know, June as, you know, as it might be, you can see it there on that window where previously it wouldn't have told you that. So that's pretty handy as well.
Yep. Great point, Justin. I thought that was a nice thing to see there as well. And sales order. So in sales order options now, you check what reports and journals you want to print when you update the daily sales journal. And we all know how annoying it is that every time you get a pop-up asking you, do you actually want to print this report, that you've already said, yes, I want this report here to print. There's a new option here of just automatically printing all those additional reports. So if you check this, you will no longer get the pop-up. It'll just print the report for you, either to paperless, preview, or paper. And then when it's done printing all the reports that you've said that you want it to do, then you only get the one pop-up of, do you want to go ahead and update the sales journal, which I think is great because I always get tired of clicking on that button. One other quick thing in purchase order. There's a couple of cool new things in purchase order now. Over on the totals tab, there's a drill down here for both the receipt and the invoice, which will actually take you right into the receipt of goods screen. And so you can see your receipt history. If I select the invoice, this is also changed now to where it actually shows you the item that was invoiced as opposed to the before that it just had the total amount that was there. So it was kind of hard sometimes to be able to match up what that invoice actually invoiced. So I think that's a great new addition to purchase order. And one last thing, in paperless office, there's a new vendor and customer electronic delivery inquiry. This will show you here when it was done and if it was successful or not and who emailed it. You can also get additional information of the email addresses that it went to and if it was successful and the time and date. So it's giving you a lot more visibility of seeing your emails as opposed to that just that it had been sent as a wire and in that was previously available. And this is both for customers and for vendors. And with that, I believe we're done with a few minutes to spare.
Oh, we have one question.
Oh, good.
When in a PO that is linked to a work ticket, we'd like to jump to the work ticket directly. Has Sage made any options to do that in versions higher than 2018?
The PO is oh, going from the PO. I'm not sure about that one. Let's see if I have anything that's linked really quick. No, it doesn't. No. It just displays it here. It's not like how it is in work ticket edit where you can jump to the purchase order.
Yeah, and in purchase order, unfortunately, it'll show you the work ticket that's linked, but you still can't jump to it. You know, you can link to it in purchase order, but it doesn't have a lookup yet. I think I saw on a roadmap that there was some plan for that in 2022, but don't quote me on that.
Have you created scripts to do so for others?
So you could theoretically create a button script to do that, but it can get kind of dicey just because you're calling another task from within purchase order. I haven't actually done it, but I believe it's theoretically possible that you could just create a button script within purchase order that could look up a work ticket. Opening work ticket entry from purchase order is very easy. The trick would be calling up the work ticket itself, the particular work ticket on the purchase order. I think you could do it, but I'll admit that I have not done it myself before.
All right. Well, those are all the questions. And it looks like you went through every single one. Didn't miss anything, guys. Way to go.
And I have to say, Lisa, my takeaway from your new features is that purchasing stuff like AP in particular, a lot of really cool features in 2021 that I wish had existed in previous versions. Especially, there's long been a utility for fixing the payments today in accounts receivable, but there was never an equivalent one in AP. So that's really great to hear because that is a thing that happens in AP just as often as in AR.
Yep, that's true.
So that's really cool.
Oh, well, I think we all found something that we could take away from this session. Thank you guys so much for all the hard work you guys put in the background of answering these questions as they came in. And for the last minute questions we actually got in the last couple days. Really kept you guys on your toes.
Well, thanks everyone for coming, and you know, we appreciate the thoughtful questions that you provided us, and you know, thanks for coming to the session. And like I said, I'll send a copy of my notes that I had for this session out to any recipients who want them.
Excellent. And finally, this conference could not be possible with our valued business partners. So we do have a business partner hall up on our website, v-bcc.com. They sponsor this event and make it possible for us all to take some time out and answer all your questions. So take a peek at that. And with that, that concludes our annual user conference. I can't believe it's over, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year, hopefully in person. Knock on wood, we'll see.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Have a
thanks
great
all for
rest of your
coming.
day.
Have a great day.